guys, Sullivan here in Philadelphia. If you're just meeting me for the first time, I am a floral designer here in Philadelphia. And about 4 years ago, I started working on renovating the garden around our formerly abandoned home here in Philadelphia. Because I had to close, because you couldn't have weddings and events for a long part of the 2020-2021 year, I spent a lot of time renovating my garden, and that's really what this channel has evolved into. So today I'm going to talk about what I'm doing in terms of fall bulb planting. I went to pick them up from a wholesale distributor, which I will talk a little bit about why I went that route. And I don't know that there's anything new under the sun in terms of digging a hole and planting a bulb. There are certainly a lot of ways you can do that. You can check out how I planted last year. I'm repeating using my auger, using my trench shovel to make the drifts of bulbs that I really enjoy. So I don't think you can talk about the 2021 bulb season without addressing supply chain issues. Certainly we were expecting there to be a lot of supply chain issues in 2020 with the pandemic, but logistics is sort of like a slow motion car crash, and everything that everybody anticipated struggling with last year is happening now. Basically what we're seeing is that there is like a huge shortage of both air cargo space and cargo ship container space, both to get it out of Europe over here, and then once it gets here to unload it. So if you're getting everything you need for your fall gardening orders late, it's just, you know, there are bigger things at work. When you combine that with like the totally cuckoo amount of demand that was generated from people being stuck at home, and also this like wild phenomenon of ladies being sold the idea of becoming flower farmers because it looks pretty on Instagram, you've just got a recipe for bulb shortages galore. Having had a really good season with a few things, I knew what I wanted more of. I ended up placing my orders for this season's bulbs in the middle of, actually in like April of 2021. So before they had even all bloomed, I was deciding what I was gonna buy. I understand that's not as fun. A lot of people don't want to commit to money for things so far in advance. I was able to narrow down many of the choices by doing it early, and I was able to get almost everything that I wanted. So I would really recommend, you know, all these websites that you buy from have email alerts, wait lists, signing up for notifications. So I really am thinking of things like a 1-year cycle. My daffodils were an incredibly big disappointment. I specifically ordered some mixes from a big distribution selling website, and I'm not going to say who because they were all incorrect. They did refund me, but I find like, yeah, you get a refund, you can order something else, but you have to wait a whole year. This year, I'm only trying 3 all-white daffodils for this same bed, and I kept a few in place in the beds from the mixes that bloomed correctly, that were like either like a champagne color. I grew a really pretty, technically narcissus rather than a daffodil, but narcissus is like the little minis that has multiple flowers at the top. One called Prosecco that I was like completely obsessed with, and I have like a ton of them. And I left them all on the ground, so hopefully those will come back. But yeah, I didn't want to add too many daffodils because frankly, there aren't a lot that are just pure white. And I don't really have a lot of space in my garden for like clear, clean yellow. I know that people love it. It's a cheerful, bright color, but I'm super selective about the yellows that I will use. One of the most popular tulips of the last decade is La Belle Epoque. It's been in the cut flower market, meaning it comes in bunches cut from Holland to the New York flower market 8 years ago. And I've planted a version branded as La Belle Epoque in my garden for 4 years now, and I don't believe I've seen a single one bloom true to name. So if you really are interested in La Belle Epoque, because basically everyone posts about this tulip, It was so limited this year based on like the insane demand that I could see which wholesalers were going to have it, and they were limiting it to 1,000 bulbs. Now, for me, 1,000 bulbs would be an absurd amount of one variety, but for these big distribution websites that sell all kinds of bulbs, like that's really limiting what they're able to order. I have a photographic memory specifically for color and flowers, and so I remember what it was like to make this arrangement with them, which was 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I haven't gotten one of those yet in my garden. So part of why I'm trying a whole bunch of other things in the warm peach, salmon, golden, apricot family is because there are lots of other tulips out there besides Belle Epoque. And like I said, Belle Epoque is late and double. So you could have early and single, you could have mid-season, like there's tons of options. You don't have to just hold out for that one. If I had to pick just one of these that I'm planting to try, even though it has no semblance of the same coloration as Belle Epoque, I would actually go for Silk Road, which is a variegated golden yellow to like white with pink striping bulb, and they all sort of bloom a little bit differently, and I think they are so gorgeous. They were one of my favorite surprises in the garden. I mean, I had known what they were, but in reality, I thought that they would be like a little more mixed and variegated, and instead they were just like really consistent. They faded beautifully. They look like a Dutch Masters tulip, but in that same kind of color family. So I think that's one that's like incredibly underrated and one that I hope to see more people trying. Another tulip that I actually tried really hard to buy a lot of is this tulip called Vovos. How do I explain this? So many of the flowers that you fall in love with on Instagram because your favorite flower farmer took a gorgeous photo of it, or your favorite Brooklyn-based floral designer took a photo of it, or your California or your Seattle or whoever, or me in Philadelphia, took a photo of this flower and put it on Instagram, doesn't mean it's a good flower for growing in your garden or even designing with necessarily. The thing about floral design on Instagram versus reality is that you can do a lot more with a photo. How you style it, things don't have to be in water. Like there's so many things happening behind the scenes. So Vovos was really gorgeous in the garden, but it was super weak in terms of like they were short, they were really late. I think they were the last tulip of mine to bloom, but you kind of tolerate that because you're getting this like kind of, it has like some parrot characteristics, like ruffling to the petals. It has this like pale golden yellow like margin. It's a really beautiful color. It looks so good with so many of the peonies and roses and iris that I grow. It was sold out for all of 2021 back in April. And I was reading about how tulips come to market, because tulips are generally brought to market. Somebody discovers a broken bulb. That generally means it either has like a virus or it has like a flaw in its genetics that makes it different from what it was supposed to be. And then if it's identified as something that this grower would like to bring to market, it takes something like 10 years to multiply that bulb stock into enough to like hit the market. And that's probably hitting the market 10 years ago. The market now is just so insane. So I almost am like reluctant to talk about this because it feels like needle in a haystack. Like I signed up for an email alert from one of the distributors and happened to be on my phone when I got the alert and was able to order it. I don't know if they naturalize. I don't know if they come back. I put 100 in the ground last year. I left them all in place. I'm putting another 200 in this year. Fingers crossed, man, it comes back because it's gorgeous. But at the same time, I don't want to be that person that makes the video that's like, oh, this is so pretty, but you can't find it anywhere. So I went through the catalogs knowing how hard this Vovos was going to be to find, because like I said, when I went to order it, it was sold out already in April of 2021. I went and picked a whole bunch of lavender, smoky, dusky, plum to like mauve colored tulips to try for this season. So I'm putting all of those in because Vovos might not be for everybody. It almost goes a little bit brown. So if you're somebody that likes really clean, bright, pop colors, probably not your tulip. So some of these might be. And that's really why I like to try lesser known varieties, is because, again, what looks good on Instagram might not look great in reality. There are things that nuance that you can do in a small flower arrangement that doesn't read as well in a garden. So I love lavender. I think lavenders and purples look good with just about everything. It's why you see so much purple in the garden world, because it's basically almost a neutral. It looks good with corals, with peaches, with the right tones of red, with brick, with rose, with, you know, peach, and on and on. And then, you know, you get into the cool colors. It looks good with blue and white and all of that. So there's just so much there in lavender that I felt like it was necessary to say there's got to be other lavender tulips to grow besides Vovos. So moving on to other types of bulbs I'm planting. I like Alliums. I tend to go for like the weirder, more unusual varieties, and mine were a huge disappointment this past season, which might have been gardener error. I had a really severe onion grass invasion in my no-dig beds this spring, and I had to do so much digging to get the onion bulblets out before they could spread that I think I might have pulled some of my Alliums up because they are in the onion family. Some of the more unusuals that I like are like the alternative colors. That kind of allium purple is probably not my shade. It swings a little more on the blue side. And so I'm doing, well, here are the varieties that I'm growing. There are millions of Alliums. They can also be hard to find because it was sort of like this in cut flowers. I think that it sort of swings in cycles about 10, 11 years. Oh God, it's like 12 now. When sort of my generation of florists started going to the market, we were looking for more unusual things. The economy hadn't been great, and floral wholesalers were sort of carrying just like kind of classic basic stuff. So it took a while for the market to catch up with what we were looking for. And I think it's going to be the same in gardening. I think there is a lot of demand to distinguish your garden, make it unique, kind of cultivate your own style. But I don't know that the people that introduce plants or the main distributors of plants, things like that, have necessarily caught up. I'm also adding some more Fritillaria. Fritillaria is like a really broad family. There's little teeny flowers, and then there's really big flowers. The Imperials, they are probably not something you're going to see me growing because they grow primarily in a bright yellow and a bright orange, just not my colors, but I love the persicas. These need staking, unless you're like me and you prefer to like let things flop around and grow how they grow. I actually think they're more interesting to design with when you let them move around. Then on the flip side, the tiny guys, there is the very popular Fritillaria metalliagris, which is sometimes known as snake's head. It's the purple white kind of checked flower. It is so beautiful to design with in like the very early spring. It's like short. It has a lot of movement. It's got kind of grassy foliage. I actually think I also accidentally weeded out a lot of these from my garden. They're just so perfect for early spring designs when like muscari and squill and, you know, hellebore, everything's like kind of short. It's a great flower. They are really affordable. They look best when you put like a lot of them together. This is not something to put like 3 of in a little space. You want to put like a drift of like 50 to 100. This is one where I would say buy a couple hundred of them if you want to try them, because they sport. There's white ones. They're just like kind of all mixed together. All the Fritillarias are stinky. They have that early spring stink. So from my point of view, they're not a flower to give away as a cut flower arrangement unless you don't particularly like the person, in which case, why are you giving them a flower arrangement? The other Fritillaria that I'm really excited to try that gets like no love because it doesn't photograph very well is Uva vulpes. This is one that you see that I've seen a lot at the cut flower market. It is also really short and tiny, and it has everything from like a goldeny red tone to rusty coral, and it looks great with so many hellebores and tulips. So I was happy to find it. In particular, it looks really good with one of the ranunculus that I'm trying this year, because I've designed with it as a cut flower. So I'm very happy to find that. So if you love those kind of warmer tones, rust, things like that, Fritillaria uva vulpes is probably one you should check out. And finally, I'm going to put my anemone and ranunculus list in here because I'm actually going to plant most of them in the month of November while I'm planting the other bulbs, which, by the way, I'm doing all of this like super late because everything showed up late, but also you can plant bulbs as long as you can dig the ground. I realized that last year I was probably planting them a little too early because we hadn't even had a frost yet. I'm going to plant about half of the anemones and ranunculus, half of the actual quantity I got in the ground now, and just let them overwinter. And then I'm going to save back about half the quantity, and I'll do the whole early spring sprouting, getting them out. I started them too early. I just did a lot of things wrong last year, and that's because I'm someone that takes on too many things, and I took on way too much for my early spring. I'm just gonna put out the anemones and ranunculus, no tunnels, no greenhouse, no fabric, no nothing, just plant them out. I mulch pretty heavily. We just have really aggressive South Philly style squirrels here. The surprise hit of all the anemones and ranunculus that I tried last year was butterfly ranunculus. This is a new introduction. It is a spray ranunculus. It is a very expensive bulb corm. They look like little tubers, but they're called corms for some reason. It's really expensive. It's patented, it's currently licensed, it's got a pretty hefty royalty on it. I would imagine it was akin to like developing like a vaccine or a drug. A lot of time went into developing this plant. It comes in about 10 colors. Generally, you can only find about 8 of them available at any given time. I grew 2 varieties last year. If you put them in a place where they get enough sun, they cranked out flowers. They were such a pretty landscape plant, which is something that really surprised me. I put a few in a place where they're probably getting a little too much shade, a little too much competition. I didn't manage to fertilize any of these plants all spring and still had tons of flowers. So I was able to get, I want to say, well, I'll put it up here. But I'm trying some other colors, including 2 that I have always loved buying when I see it as a cut flower, which are called Musa. I look at it and I think Musa, and Theseus. These are both in that kind of rust, brick to coral tone. They are gonna look so good with so many of the peonies that I grow, and some iris. So I'm very excited about them. I don't think that I have to put them out as early as I did in the early spring, and we'll see how they do over winter. You know, all of these things that you put out in the ground over winter, the biggest risk to them is not that it's too cold, it's that they get wet and rot. Because I'm buying at quantity where I'm getting 100, 200 of these things, I have some to spare. Definitely, if you can find the butterfly ranunculus, I think they're going to start becoming more widely available in another year or 2 in terms of being sold for home gardening. However, bear in mind that just like the giant Fritillarias, the giant Alliums, I'm trying to think of some, summer bulbs, like some of the colocaceas, elephant ears, things like that, they can be somewhere in the $6 to $25 range per bulb. These are expensive, even at a wholesale level. So you're going to see them be priced at a premium. The other one that I'm trying, which is, as I sit here and say, like I don't have a lot of room for red, orange, is a color called Cafe. My friends, the Hatas, who grow ranunculus as their specialty cut flower growers in New Jersey, their spring crop is hellebore and ranunculus. They grow Cafe so beautifully. I want to say this is the same variety that they grow, but, you know, out of respect for their business, I don't like ask them to give me the different varieties that they grow. But the Cafe photographs online are nothing compared to what this thing like really looks like in real life. It's just like so unusual. It's got like some mustard, some rust, some burgundy, bronze. Cafe really isn't the right name for it, but I guess you couldn't call it like rusty. Anemones are, I'm like full of garden puns today. Anemones are a perennial favorite of mine, even though they're not a perennial plant. I sort of first became well known when I was a florist for using the black and white anemone. I have it tattooed all over me. It is a very special flower to me, and honestly, it's a super easy plant to grow. You can pre-sprout them. You should soak them. You can just throw them in the ground, and they will crank flowers out for you. Like, don't plant too many because you're gonna have to go around and like deadhead them. So the more you cut, the more they grow. So and they start to look really nasty, especially after a rainstorm. So, but you know, I love this plant. I am trying more in that lavender family because I grew like a pretty broad assortment of them last year. If you're struggling to find bulbs, especially bulbs that you've seen your favorite YouTuber, Instagrammer, flower grower, etc., I hope you'll explore some of the other alternatives, especially with what's still available out there. Hopefully you can find some good deals because it's getting to be like sale season soon. And like I said, it's not too late to plant them. You really do not need to have the exact tulip as your favorite influencer to have a beautiful display. And I think that's what makes gardening so interesting, is that it's your space to tailor it to your style. It's a form of expression that I really enjoy. So in exciting news, we are getting the rest of our woodwork. We had some woodwork that we needed to have done to the outside of the house, and we'll be finishing our exterior painting. We're also staining the fence. So I am very excited for those two things. So hopefully that will motivate me to get out there and finish planting, because everything looks good against the paint and stain color we use. I'm also getting ready to kick off holiday projects. I have no idea how to top last year's ornament display, but I won't worry about that. Maybe something will come to me while I'm out there planting. So if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and see how all of this stuff grows over the next few months. And for you guys that have been here for a little while, you might have noticed that my channel is now called my garden channel. And that is because I have a second channel that I am working on getting ready to debut for you, hopefully for the holidays. Stay tuned, and thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.